Well, we got some great questions today that were written in by you, the viewer, and Father John's going to outline them for us.
I will.
All right.
Okay, first we're going to look at today, during this pandemic, do we have outdoor weddings?
Or how about indoor? Can we have indoor weddings?
Well, indoor, outdoor plumbing. I don't know about weddings. Another question we have today, are there private revelations that are binding on the faithful?
Yeah, we see a lot of that going on throughout the country and around the world. So how do we know which one is true and which one isn't?
What's private, what's public?
Yeah.
And finally, a question today about the divisions of cardinals and not the birds.
No, but
or the baseball team.
What division are the Cardinals in, though? That would be a good.
There you go. Yeah.
Anyways, we're not answering
I'm
that.
an Indians fan.
We're not answering that part. We're answering about the Cardinals that
in
are
the church.
The princes of the church. Yes. These questions will be answered for you if you stay tuned. Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Web of Faith 2.1.5. Father John cannot just keep the excitement contained, as you can see. Anyways, this is my name is Father Kenneth Briganti. I'm pastor here at St. Mary Magdalene de Pazzi Parish, Flemington, New Jersey, Diocese of Metuchen. For those who are viewing us outside of our parish, and YouTube especially, because we do get questions from all over
Canada.
So. And Florida too. We had some for questions. So we like to welcome everybody to viewing this this special quarantine edition of our Web of Faith 2.0. Which my mother asked me again, "What time does that air?" I said, "Saturdays, Ma, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time." Oh, I'm asleep at that time. I said, "Probably you and everybody else." But anyways, Eastern Standard Time, which means it airs in the West at 8 o'clock. Eastern or Western Standard Time in the
Pacific.
In the West. Or Pacific, that's it. That's why we have you here, Father. So you keep me on my toes. Anyways, how it works is you send in the questions and we try, and I emphasize try, to answer them for you on this show. So we did get a whole bunch of new questions, so we'll be happy to answer them today. And I'd like to introduce you my co-host.
I'm Father John Trigilio of the Diocese of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and Director of Pastoral Formation at Mount St. Mary's Seminary in Emmitsburg, Maryland.
So I think you have a question for me, Father. We're going to start right off.
Okay.
It's a long one.
Let's see here. It's the after thank you, right?
Yes.
Dear Father Ken and Father John, thank you for the Web of Faith. As we all know, because of the pandemic, churches are closed, there are no funeral masses, baptisms, First Holy Communions were postponed, as well as weddings. Traditionally, the sacrament of matrimony is only inside a church. I do understand why. However, I'm wondering if, because of the pandemic, weddings will be allowed outside. More than ever, it's difficult for young people to live pure, chaste lives. The sacrament is the most important part of a wedding day. Can marriages still occur? The venues are closed, but the sacrament doesn't have to be put on hold, and couples can have their special day and begin their lives together as one. Even if the government is prohibiting large gatherings, can small weddings take place? Thank you for your response. God bless. And that's from Jane F.
Well, Jane, very good question and very astute, by the way. I appreciate the fact that you know all the different parts of the sacrament. Well, first of all, at this point in the juncture, things are beginning to being relaxed. I think we're in stage 1 or stage 2 at this point. Hasn't really been defined by anybody yet, but
or some places have colors.
But we are able to have small baptisms. So we had one last Saturday, which we had parents and of course the godparents and the child. So there was 5, and then they videoed the rest, live streamed it and videoed it, so that people could watch it as it was being celebrated, and also they'll have it for later on. Going forward in the future with baptisms, we probably will just do single family ones, maybe a little bit more in the number can become, but everybody practice 6 feet social distancing in there that were not related to mom and dad and the baby. So it was done very appropriately and very nicely and without any fuss and muss and the baby was baptized. Of course, if the baby was in danger of death, that baby would have been baptized anyways. We would have gone and do that. And there's an old Latin term, in periculi mortis, which means in danger of death. Sacraments can be administered. The other thing would be, yes, First Holy Communion is, because that involves more people, more outside family, so naturally you would postpone it to a later time. Now, I could understand that maybe some of the families would like to have an individual First Holy Communion once the churches are opening. That could very well happen. But there were still some instructions, and I think a lot of parishes, probably because we closed, about the beginning of March, so there was about 2 months of instructions that were not done. So most likely that child is not ready then to receive the sacrament because there's still a little instructions that have to be done. So that's all being worked out. I'm sure every parish is the same. They're working those things out. Confirmation also was postponed by our bishop. That will be given at another date, so we're waiting on that. And it just so happens that that's the state that we're in. Now, in regards to marriage, my understanding is if it is a very small wedding, we had one that was scheduled the end of May, but they decided to postpone it themselves. But that marriage probably could have taken place as long as there was not more than 10 people in the church for that. At this point, funeral masses, and I don't understand if you can have a marriage for 10, why you can't have a funeral for 10. But at this point, a funeral mass is not permitted yet. As we go into the stages, we'll probably get more directives. Like stage 2, you might be able to allow. Stage 2, as I was told, presupposes weekday mass already with no more than 10, and you're beginning to open up the Sunday mass with a limited amount. So at that point, I would think we would get new directives from the diocese. They work very close with the governor. And that's how these things all iron out. Now, in regards to your question about matrimony outside, the bishop has he is the one that delegates, and he also is the one that gives permission. And if we don't, as a pastor, have permission from the bishop, or the pastor give permission to a priest coming in, that marriage could be invalid. So at this point, we do not have permission to say a wedding outside. But in the Diocese of Harrisburg, which I'll have Father John explain in a moment, that's his diocese, his bishop has given permission, but in very rare and certain cases. So, Father, maybe you'd like to explain a little bit more about what your bishop is opening up. This is pre-Wuhan.
Yeah, pre-Wuhan.
But more, I think it was last year, actually, the bishop.
It was last year. Because up to that point, Harrisburg was like most other dioceses. All weddings had to take place either in a Catholic church or with a bishop's dispensation. You get married in a Protestant church. Catholic priest would be there as a courtesy.
In a very rare situation, you could be married in a hotel. For example, if the family was anti-Catholic,
if they weren't,
or they were not of the Christian faith, like a Jewish,
Hindu,
which you could
Muslim.
not go into their church, their temple.
Yeah, so this is considered neutral territory.
Right.
Now, in certain circumstances, you may be allowed to get married outside in the Harrisburg Diocese, but again, it has to be cleared through the Chancery Office, through the tribunal, in the name of the bishop. So a normal wedding between two Catholics would not take place outside, because when I worked at St. Joan of Arc in Hershey, everybody and their mother-in-law want to get married in the Rose Garden, because it is a beautiful, it looks nice, takes good pictures, but the idea is that the sacraments are entrusted to the church. They don't belong to the priest. They don't belong to the bishop. They belong to the church. And, Jesus Christ established all 7 of them. So we want them in sacred space. So again, this would only be in the case where a Catholic marries a non-Christian. Can't be just a Catholic marrying a Protestant, but a Catholic marrying a non-Christian. But again, they go case by case. I believe not on Sundays at all, but maybe on a Saturday or weekday, for extraordinary reasons. Again, if the family of the non-Catholic party vehemently does not want to go to the Catholic Church, this would be there for the sake of keeping peace in the family. But it has to be made known that's what's going on. Not a lot of them are taking place, though, outside.
And this is in the Diocese of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Not Metuchen.
Not Metuchen, New Jersey. So the province of New Jersey does not have pause there's a low battery. Yeah.
Hard to see where the little battery goober is. Well, at least it warned you.
Yeah.
Well, good thing we weren't live.
At Mass. Because
You said diocese.
the province of New Jersey. Yeah.
Yep.
So in the province of New Jersey, we do not have that permission. All the bishops in that province means the different dioceses, Catholic dioceses in the province of the Newark, New Jersey, as that is our metropolitan. They usually come up with a cohesive answer to solutions and problems or permissions. And right now, we do not have that here. So, but it might be something that will be looked in the future. I did put that little buzz in the bishop's ear to say I always share the good stuff from Harrisburg, and I share it with the bishop, whether it's the bishop.
Now, your diocese, at one point, didn't you have weddings on Sundays in extreme instances?
You can still have
Okay, yeah. See, now there's a different.
In fact,
diocese to
we'll
diocese.
have a wedding on Sunday, Holy Family Sunday, God willing.
Okay.
There's a wonderful couple that's going to be getting married at 5 p.m. It's outside of the Mass schedule. And they wanted to get married on the Feast of Holy Family. They're very devout and very religious. So yeah, so we do have weddings on Sundays.
Now,
It depends on for our diocese. It depends on the parish if they want to have a Sunday wedding.
Now, I do want to mention that a young man that both Father Briganti and I know, he was in the seminary, then he left because he discerned he had a vocation, not to the priesthood, but to married life. Got married in the cathedral in Harrisburg. Because they didn't want to postpone it because of the virus. So it was just him. It was John Zaleski and his wife, and the two witnesses, the priest, and I believe their parents. that was about it.
So we're going to have the reception in July because we got to save the date.
Yes.
So hopefully we will be able to be out of quarantine in July and be able to go to that. Yeah. So he actually John helped me moved in here. Nice guy.
I remember.
Yeah,
yes.
nice
yes.
guy. So
there's a case where, or even like with the baptism that Father Briganti mentioned, you could have a small gathering and then later on have a little party, because sometimes people put more emphasis on the party. I had one couple, they wanted me to baptize their baby in the pool at their backyard because they're going to have a pool party after the baptism.
Wow, there you go.
And I said, what I wanted to say was I want you to go jump in the pool. But I said, no, we'll have the baptism and then you can go home. And if anybody doesn't want to come to the church, they can stay home and float in the pool until you guys get back. But because, again, it's a sacrament. Could you imagine if somebody's, needs to get their appendix pulled out? You'd say to the doctor, I'll just do it on the picnic table because we don't want to rush to the hospital.
Now, also you have to remember that the regulations of people is stringent outside as well as inside right now. So that wouldn't be a good excuse. But what I see is a lot of people like these destination weddings. And they're because they watch the soap opera or these romantic comedies and what have you. And some of them are done outside of a church and at a beach, and so therefore they're not valid. Okay. Now, I was before I went to teach in the seminary, was preparing a couple to get married in Italy, and they were going to be married in a Catholic church there. And our chancery office was working with their chancery office, and then I would have permission that would be delegated by the bishop of that diocese to allow me to do the marriage, which was going to be really nice. It was going to be on the Amalfi Coast, and one of the if you know the Amalfi Coast, it hugs the hip of Italy over the Mediterranean, just absolutely the most beautiful part of Italy. And then what happened was I got transferred to the seminary, and it was going to be in September, and that's of course school time, so I could not do it. So, but I did all the preparation, though. I just want to let you know, got all the dispensations and all that. But that was going to be my one, which would have been a good destination wedding because it would have been done in a church.
Yes.
with the proper permissions and delegations and etc. But it's very complicated, by the way.
Oh, I know, because I
Yeah.
did one for dear parishioner friends of mine in Marysville. His son and future daughter-in-law, I think we got married. I married them in Denver, and
Oh yeah, at the
they
little
wanted
chapel.
they wanted to do it outside, and I called the Archdiocese of Denver, and they said absolutely not. But there was the chapel. It's a little tiny church where St. John Paul the Great celebrated Mass when he went out for World Youth Day to Denver. So it's a gorgeous, very traditional looking Catholic church. It's small, but it has that historic reality that's where John Paul had been. And so we had Mass there, very small crowd, and then they had the rest of them, 200 people at the reception site. It was only a mile away. So even though the wedding did not take place outside as some of the guests wanted, they had the reception outside, which is perfect. And the wedding was very nice because it was just mom and dad and some close relatives and the bridal party, and of course yours truly.
So, as I say, Jane, as the stages of opening the churches up, things is in flux and will be changing. Permissions will be granted on those bases there. So stay tuned. So right now, we hope that covered most of your question. Okay, Father Trujillo, we have one for you now, and this is one very interesting question because it's about cardinals. And we know
And not the Boyds.
No, and we know you're pretty aficionado on cardinals here. So, dear Father, I received news that Cardinal Tallier, I hope I'm saying that right, being elevated as a cardinal bishop. What does this mean? Thank you. This show is very educational, entertaining. Regards to Father Matthew. He's doing a fantastic job, and I think this is one of our biggest fans. It's our own Remy.
Remy. Wow.
Who's a fantastic cook, by the way. We had
we just
enjoyed her
some
lunch
of her fare
yes.
recently.
So, Remy, great question. Yes, there are different divisions of cardinals, and Father Trujillo is going to outline them for us.
Yes. A cardinal, as you know, is a man chosen by the Pope who then his main job, not his only job, his main job is when the Pope dies, or as we now see with Pope Benedict, when the Pope resigns, they call a conclave, and all the cardinals from all the world come over who are under the age of 80, and they are able to vote for the next Pope. Now, there's a way of classifying three groups of cardinals. There's the cardinal deacon, the cardinal priest, and the cardinal bishop. Now, in ancient times, the cardinal deacons were actually deacons. They were deacons in Rome who were given charge over certain churches, and they were very affluent, very influential people of the time. Now, basically, all the cardinals are definitely bishops. In a few cases, like with Cardinal Avery Dulles, it was he was, I wouldn't say honorary, but he was made cardinal well after the age of 80, so that he couldn't vote, and he remained a priest because he didn't want to be shuffled around doing all kinds of confirmations and stuff like that. But normally, the cardinals are bishops. Some of them are archbishops of a large archdiocese. Some of them just work exclusively in the Vatican. But the different levels, cardinal, deacon, cardinal bishop, cardinal priest, cardinal bishop would be the highest. So the fact that this cardinal was raised to the level of cardinal bishop, there's not that many of them. And they get a little preference. They're the last ones in the procession line.
Any different kind of plumage?
No, they wear the exact same thing. And so the only way that you could tell is by where they're in the pecking order, the line, because the most important guys go at the end. If you're in the front of the line, you're a peon. If you're at the end of the line, you're most
So
important.
I'm usually in the front of the line, right, Father?
Oh, you're smack in the middle, Father Ken. Smack in the middle.
But now, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Can a bishop be a cardinal deacon?
A bishop can be a cardinal deacon because they no longer. In fact, I don't think there's not one single instance of a deacon being a cardinal. Although,
you mean an ordained deacon?
yes, because all bishops were first made deacons, and then they were ordained priests, and then finally bishops. So although the origin of cardinal deacon was a deacon, right now they're all bishops, especially if they're 80 years or younger. But the fact that we have these levels, and again, they're like titles like Major General and, Lieutenant and Vice Admiral. Like in the military, you have different levels. The cardinals, there are a lot of cardinal deacons. There are fewer amount are cardinal priests, and very few are cardinal bishops. Now, there are rumors and speculation that if you get raised to this level, it means you have the Pope's favor, and that maybe you should be considered first if there is a conclave. That is all hearsay. Okay, so that none of the cardinals are limited to just put cardinal bishops in the first slot when they do have a conclave. But that's what the politicians and bureaucrats like to talk about when they're around the Vatican water cooler, so to speak.
Now, would you say like the old monsignors were divided into three sections?
Yes.
Like you had the PA, the Protonotary Apostolic, paper chamberlains, and then
and there was again pecking order. My pastor when I was growing up, Monsignor Conley, he wasn't a PA, but he was.
That's Protonotary Apostolic,
yeah.
a PA.
That's the highest rank of Monsignor, and that means you're not going to ever be a bishop. That's more like a consolation prize. Right. But you also had domestic prelates and papal chamberlains. My Monsignor, my pastor, he was the Right Reverend Monsignor, and then the lower rank was Very Reverend Monsignor. Now they're just Reverend Monsignor. They don't make these other distinctions. But just like that, you had different levels of Monsignor, so too with the Cardinal. So a lot of this is honorary, a lot of it is,
Think of it like a medal, a type of a award given. Yeah. It's similar to that.
But it is prestigious, not in the worldly sense, but again, this shows that the Pope has lots of confidence in these fellows. So for him to be raised to that level, it's not like if you're raised to a PA, that's like up and out. It's like kicking you out of the race, so to speak. But a cardinal bishop does have some, like I said, special. I wouldn't say aura. But recognition is a good way of putting him. He has no extra authority. He doesn't have any power over other cardinals. The only person that would have more authority than him would be the Secretary of State. Okay, that's the cardinal who basically is, quote unquote, I wouldn't want to say the vice pope. Okay, but he's like the prime minister.
Well, that brings us to a good question, because wasn't there a term black pope?
The black pope was actually the head of the Jesuits, and it was sort of tongue-in-cheek title that was given to him because at one time the Jesuits were very numerous and very powerful, and they were all over the world, and because they had so much influence, the superior general of all the Jesuits got the nickname the Black Pope.
They wore a black cassock, as opposed to the Pope, who wore a white cassock.
Which goes back to the time of Pope St. Pius V, who was a Dominican and didn't want to give up his Dominican habit. So up to that point, before Pope St. Pius V, many popes wore typically a lot of red because they were cardinals.
Right. So anyways, that's a very good question, Remy, and it cleared up a few things in my mind.
Yes, and keep the food deliveries coming too.
Oh, yes. We have your dishes washed, and we're going to give them back to you.
Ready to go.
All right.
All right, we have one here for you.
Yes.
Dear Fathers, thank you for taking my question. My understanding is that private revelations are generally not binding on the faithful to accept as truth. However, are there any private revelations binding on the faithful? For example, Fatima, Medjugorje, etc. Thank you, and that's from Anonymous.
Well, Anonymous, no. They're not binding. And however, there are some that are called approved revelations and those that are not. So the only revelation that is binding for us is what was left to the last public revelation to the last apostle, which was St. John the Beloved. And of course, what we have since then, since St. John the Beloved had passed away, is a refinement or an explanation or maybe change in language of the deposit of faith that was entrusted by Christ, taught by him, and then entrusted to the apostles, especially the last one, as I mentioned, John the Beloved. After he died, there was no more public revelation. So all of that is, of course, is contained in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Now, you might say, well, what is the, some of the contemporary things that we have in the Catechism of the Catholic Church? Well, we're taking principles that our Blessed Lord taught to the apostles, and you take those principles and you can apply them to present moral theology. So that's why we consider that all part of public revelation. Now, what you mentioned about Fatima and Medjugorje, now Fatima was deemed by the Catholic Church as an approved miracle, that Our Lady appeared to the three children in Portugal, Jacinta, Lucia, and Francesco, and that her message was authentic, and nothing in that message was contrary to faith and morals. Okay, Lourdes is another one that has that status. Guadalupe is another. Those are three of the major Marian ones, but there are quite a few more apparitions in Dublin, not Dublin, but in Ireland.
Knock, Ireland.
Knock, Ireland is another approved apparition, although Our Lady didn't say anything.
Nobody said.
But she did come with St. Joseph, though,
Yes,
which is nice.
they're just images. Apparitions, but no locutions.
But that is an approved apparition. Now, Medjugorje, the verdict is still out because it is believed that Our Lady is still speaking to the seers, and so therefore, until the last apparition takes place, and then the church has to look at the messages to make sure there's nothing in there that's contrary to the deposit of faith. As we mentioned, comes in the last of the public revelation of our deposit of faith with John the Beloved, the disciple, and then they judge there, and then the whole thing from there goes in for a formal examination. And Pope St. Paul VI came up with points on to look what is a authentic apparition and what is not. So some were deemed not authentic, but not diabolical. There's a distinction. Some were considered not authentic and diabolical too. So there is that. So Medjugorje does not have any status yet because they're still believed to be receiving messages from Our Lady. So that's why the verdict is still out on that.
So you, as a Catholic, can say, I don't believe Mary appeared in Lourdes and not be a bad Catholic. Now, the church says that those of us who do believe that it is credible and it's authentic in the sense that it has the endorsement of the church. But again, you're right. It's not a matter of faith and morals. It's not, because again, the message of Mary, was not, you can't add to public revelation. And there's where they make a distinction when they investigate these cases, wherever, if it sounds as if Mary is changing or adding to public revelation, right off the bat, they say, well, then this doesn't look too authentic.
For example, Bayside Queens, that was not an authentic apparition.
Yeah.
And in fact, there was messages very contrary to Catholic faith in there.
Yeah, Veronica Lucan had said that Pope Paul VI had been kidnapped, and that Mary had told her that he was kidnapped, and an Italian actor was taking his place, and Father Gelli was a good friend of ours, a Dominican who of happy memory now.
Right.
He investigated a few cases.
He did Connors, Georgia, I think.
Yes, and then in Texas.
Maryland.
Well, he was a spiritual director of the Lady in Emmitsburg.
Okay.
And again, too many people think it's either or. Either this is of God or it's of the devil. Well, there's more possibilities. Yes.
There is that in between.
Because you have someone who means well. You can even have a saintly person or a saint themselves. Just because someone's holy doesn't mean if they have an apparition that gives it absolute credibility. They may be deluded. They may have a psychological thing going on. This may be a misinterpretation of something. It may be explained through other phenomena. So just because a saintly or a saint person has these experiences does not mean de facto that's an authentic apparition.
But it was a lot of times it's just considered not supernatural, so they had no evil intent. But there was an interesting thing. We had a case in New Jersey where a man in the Trenton Diocese was believed to receive an apparition of St. Joseph. And so this was maybe 20 years ago or more. No, more than 20 years ago, almost 30 years ago, 25 years ago, let's say. And there was a formal investigation for led by the Diocese of Trenton using Pope Paul VI criteria. And it was deemed that there was nothing supernatural in this, meaning that, God was not, or St. Joseph was not visiting this person, but there was also nothing diabolical, meaning nothing evil in the message there. It's just the person, was believing in it was actually not an apparition, but a locution that St. Joseph was speaking to him. So, so that's the criteria. So we hope, Anonymous, that answers some of your questions. And, it comes to another.
Our Lady is telling us right now we have to end.
You had a locution, Father. Oh my goodness! All right, but we don't know if that's authentic, but it is
certainly
because
is not.
Father Matthew is saying that time is done. So we want to thank Father Matthew, our producer and director and editor and sound man and cameraman, for producing this episode and all our episodes. And also, if you have any questions that you would like to send in, he's going to put up a web address or email, I should say, address for you, so you can send in your questions. And finally, keep those donations to our parish coming in, either electronically, and there's a webinar that you can go there. And Father John said I hadn't mentioned this yesterday. Regina Eberschein in our business office can help you with that after you look at the webinar and you have questions and you want to sign up. Or you can go by PayPal or texting, various ways, or the traditional envelopes is fine too. Whatever way you do it, we appreciate your generosity. Now, Father, I think it's time for our blessing.
Okay, the Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
May Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
God bless you until we see you next time.
Bye-bye.